Hey everybody, welcome back to the passenger seat. Today I am driving my dream car, the 1965 Trident Peel. It is an absolutely incredible vehicle. As soon as I saw this um, exquisite piece of machinery, I was absolutely obsessed. I have been telling everybody about this car for the last, I guess, 2 weeks since I've been playing Forza. Um, yeah, I think there is so much potential in this car in that I think we currently live in this society where cities are becoming more and more like poorly designed. At least where I am in the world, it feels like urban planning is often an afterthought, and there is this conundrum in North America when it comes to how much we value our autonomy and freedom of movement versus um, actually livable spaces, like walkable spaces, green spaces, things that we need for mental health, but at the same time, it is very difficult to compromise with for many reasons. So, if you are living in a city like myself, where you are seeing this like arms race of bigger and bigger cars, like SUVs, trucks, um, in places that don't even necessarily need uh, trucks, just your average mom living in a suburban neighborhood just wants to drive like a taller car. Um, I'm not very well versed in car models, but I often see, like BMW SUVs as like the sensible option for cars. Here it's like a lot of Fords, huge Ford trucks. Um, and I understand the necessity if you're living in a place that like requires a large, ooh, yeah, large vehicles for like off-roading, um, or like needing to haul a lot of material around. Um, So interestingly, people are calling it kind of an arms race of cars, is because people are noticing that more and more cars are just getting bigger. Like people are buying bigger cars because there has been increased number of deaths in auto accidents. And if you drive like a smaller car and you hit a larger car, you are more likely to be the one in danger. So people have been buying larger cars for safety, height, lots of reasons. Um, but I think as that has been like a payoff too, because there has been a higher number of pedestrian deaths, because for a sedan, if you are hit by a sedan, there is more chance of survival um, if your body hits like the curve of the front, right? Whereas if you are hit by a larger car, there is a higher chance of death because there's really nowhere for the body to like absorb the impact, and so you're like getting it straight on because cars are taller. Oops. There is an incredible video on this from About Here. He demonstrates it with, charts and graphs that can explain things infinitely better than me. I highly recommend you check that out. I will put it in the description below. And so this comes back to the Trident? The Trident, yeah. This comes back to the Peel because when I saw this car, I was thinking about how incredible it would be to live in a world where this is kind of the norm, where everybody drives a car like this. So I think like notice like how small I am on the road. It's like everything would be a lot smaller. So there would be lesser need for more parking lots, a lesser need for more like highways and roads. Everything could be a bit narrower, I think, and more able to accommodate green spaces. So thinking about autonomy of movement, like we live in a world where people are accustomed to a certain kind of freedom in the sense that like you can go where you want to go. I think there was a really great episode of Ologies, a podcast that talked about trains. Oh my gosh, what happened? There we go. Hey, check that out. So they talked about, oh, this is a little awful. Okay, I'm not gonna use this view because it's kind of motion sickness inducing. So in an episode of Ologies, they talked about what would have happened if our society, North American society, developed into a train society rather than a car society. Like if trains had taken off rather than cars, like if we didn't have like the golden age, how our societies would look, because a lot of our world is built around what we became accustomed to in the 50s. Oh, that was a very pathetic speed trap. Oh, okay, yeah, well, great. Yeah, so in the 50s, like with the popularization of like drive-ins and like individual autonomy, where like teenagehood was being developed, and like teenagers all had cars and were able to like move around freely across the country. Like the episode of Ologies discusses how an alternative would look if it were trains that really blew up instead of cars. So if we were to go from station to station into like, walkable city to walkable city, how society would look different. So the Peel, I feel like, offers a kind of in between. When I saw this car, I kind of envisioned this like utopia of, oh man, we're gonna go through this speed trap. It's gonna be really pathetic, but yeah, I couldn't help but envision this utopia where we, instead of trains and cars, we had a world full of these little guys. And I was thinking about how to accommodate this car for the other needs that we have, like moving, like driving more than one person. And I was thinking how cool it would be to have these cars as like rental units, the way we have like bikes and scooters. And so like you don't have to, like people don't need to live in homes with garages or parking spaces. It's rather, it's a matter of going from designated spot to designated spot, and making more space for spaces that have a lot to offer, like spaces that are full of greenery. You can go from business to business. Like this is why I think often downtown centers are very populated and fun, because there's a lot to do. If you go to like a beautiful waterside downtown area, it's like it's very easy to go from restaurant to restaurant, like pub to pub, theaters and activities. But I think a huge barrier to that currently is there's a huge lack of parking, and lots of downtowns will charge like through the nose for 1 hour parking, and just the traffic is insane. And so how different would it be if instead we like rent out or like publicly own just a fleet of Peels in every area? And I was thinking it would be really cool to have like attachments to these cars, like a trailer if you need to move things, so it's a temporary thing rather than needing to own a truck. Specifically, oh my gosh, what lag. And if you need to like drive a lot of passengers, I was talking to a friend about this, and we had this very cute idea of like linking a train of peels. It's like a mini train. It's like one after another. Everybody sits in their own little pods, and it's kind of like tandem biking, but we're all driving these like tri-wheeled vehicles. And yeah, like this one in this game goes like 80 kilometers an hour, and I feel like that's pretty good for larger stretches of distance. Um, maybe we can maintain the train system. Um, yeah, but I guess like I'm coming from a quite an urban point of view. For just like a lot of I've always going. I've always grown up in very densely populated cities, and so to me, I feel like that would solve a lot of the crises that we have with transportation, like buses that are unreliable and sometimes dangerous, and spreading the immense privilege of owning and maintaining a vehicle and making it more accessible to everybody by having like a fleet of public peels. And I feel like let's just go to this barn, if everybody drove a car that went at this speed, I wonder how many generations it would take for us to be maybe accustomed to this pace of life. I know like on highways it would be horrible to drive at this speed the entire time. Like when I looked up a real life peel for £20,000, you can build your own really peel vehicle, and it would go at 45 kilometers per hour, which is like quite slow. It's like the speed of a scooter, like a little Vespa. But I think if we had like cities with narrower paths and more accessible spaces, I don't know if we would feel it as often. The larger problem would be like going from like hub to hub, like from large city to large city. That might be more of a problem. But if just imagining a city where we don't need roads that are this wide. We don't need massive high rises and condos that need to accommodate like 4 floors of parking. That would make space for way more housing units, right? So I feel like housing would be a lot more affordable, and if we don't need to like pay for a parking spot in our own spaces, then driveways could be turned into additional housing, or we would not have need for garages, and that would make space for other things. And if not additional housing or additional businesses, it could be green spaces, it could be a larger blend of both. I don't know. I just think it's really interesting to think about, and I was just so incredibly inspired by this little car. And my friend was like, "This is the car society deserves," and I agree. Yeah, I think when it comes to larger distances or like higher needs, we can find ways to innovate around that. Like this car is absolutely crap for off-roading. I need to be like it's really not very high horsepower, but it would be interesting to have it replace other types of public transportation. Maybe we could you know, somehow innovate a bus version of this that could fit more people. But I suppose that would defeat the purpose of it, because I was thinking it would be very small. But yeah, make things walkable. Okay, wow, this is just awful. This is so awful. Hopefully in my Peel Utopia, you wouldn't have to drive up a hill this steep. Alright, I'm gonna have to replace this car with something a bit more... I'm gonna fave this. I just adore this car. Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where we are used to certain things that we have, certain like realities we live with, like this SUV thing. Everybody has an off-roading vehicle, and like the whole scourge of luxury vehicles. It's so funny because I love these types of games. I love driving games in general, but I have absolutely no reverence for cars, like supercars and things like that. This game is extremely cathartic for like running Lambos off a cliff, and I feel like that's fun. But yeah, so that's been my little thought project, using the Peel for growing our current world into a more accessible place for more people, and growing our ability to encompass more green spaces and more livable spaces. Yeah, because I mean, of course there's lots of factors into this, and it's not just cars in general. Like, just the way we accommodate cars in our current world have led to a lot of oh, this is bad. I do feel like we're reaching a stage in capitalism where it's no longer, you know, humans first. We like innovation is being done to, like, innovative urban design is being done to accommodate the aspects of society that we're used to, rather than human needs. And I think, you know, there is a housing crisis all around the world, and it's not that we don't have enough houses. A lot of large inequities are completely man-made, and I think we've known that for a long time. I also think cars have influenced a great deal for the last over 100 years, 120 years. It's been 120 something years of cars, and it's hard to imagine living without it. And I think even like this vehicle itself, which was, I believe it came out in the 60s, it's something I've never seen before this game, and I was like, hey, like, yeah, why couldn't these cars be this way? Like, we're also accustomed to a certain way that cars work and function and look. So I think there is a lot of innovation that's being untapped here. As I've been observing the growth of the city I live in and seeing the choices that people are making in order to expand the city, it's quite fascinating. I spent some time now in multiple quickly growing cities, and yeah, often what happens is urban designers will carve out the green spaces and instead replace it with concrete. It's like modernization for some reason always looks like Soviet Russia, which just is stupid. Like, nobody wants that. You know, when we think about the most appealing places on earth to live, they are often places that offer a lot of nature. and a lot of opportunities to be in nature, and have breaks from extremely urban places. Um, so I know that this car is so slow. It is so not the vibe, I think, for a lot of people, but I think there is so much imagination that can be had with something that feels very modular to me, something that's more adaptable and yet like universal in ways that can increase safety and equity. So yeah, I find it a really, really fascinating car. Um, yeah, I learned recently that a lot of new cars are just becoming more and more digital, and that's kind of the trend that it's going. Like everyone is sort of following the footsteps of Tesla. But when I speak to car enthusiasts, they're like, yeah, those aren't great to fix. You know, they aren't really reliable, and it's really difficult to do their electrical engineering versus older cars you could drive forever. Um, and Parts wise, too, it's much cheaper to produce an iPad that has the function of everything. A smart pad, I suppose, that controls your radio and your lights and everything's touchscreen, um, compared to um, like knobs and buttons. And I think many people have seen innovation as a simplification from buttons. You know, people who have grown up with phones with buttons, seeing that they no longer have buttons. Buttons, for some reason, is like modernization's public enemy number one, and we want everything to be sleek and touchscreen and non-tactile, which is, in my opinion, it can be an accessibility issue, right? Tactility. um, and There has been lots of criticisms too of cars like the Tesla, where you can just do way too much. You're trying to not distract people from as they're driving, but you can play games and watch movies on the Tesla, which, if you need to be parked to do, why not park yourself at home and do that, or at the theater and do that? It's a very strange place we're living, where a lot of tech companies are giving things we don't necessarily want, but they've convinced us we want. So I think there is potential in thinking about how we can slow down, and envision progress as looking, perhaps, I don't want to use the word backwards, because that is, I find that people who like love to talk about progress would find that derogatory in some way, but really like looking to the past to move forward, and going back to the root of what people actually want and need. Um, and if you are someone who lives in a big city, I think accessibility, not being like crowded on public transport, um, being able to get where you want to go, and then being able to go to places that are inspiring, that are, you know, beneficial, that are beautiful, that are entertaining, like things that have more character than residential areas to residential areas. You know, because people are congregating where there are other people, but if there's no place to congregate because we have all these like empty buildings and we're not making business centers accessible, then what's the point? Um, yeah, so it's interesting that there's has been large experiments with walkable cities all over the world, and I know that that is something that lots of people want. Um, and how we do that, you know, that Bugatti. How we do that, it's up to the imagination. There is a lot untapped. I think, again, I feel like our imaginations are very stunted. That was a close call with that bus, but that was kind of dangerous. But at the same time, if our buses looked like Peels, that is a different thing altogether. So, yeah, I welcome any ideas you have about how to modify this car. Um, I thought about, yeah, trailer attachments, linking the peels, having taller peels, like leg attachments attached to the wheels for folks with more accessibility needs. Like if they can't bend down, you can adjust it to your height. It would still take up this much space. So if it's taller, it shouldn't bother other people. But yeah, I mean, all of this is just pure imagination, and it would be kind of a wonderful utopia, I think, but one that would be a bit difficult to get everyone on board. Yeah, thank you for tuning in, and see you next time with whatever thoughts come to mind. See you later.